Welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube, Speaking Podcast. I also have the Awakening Podcast, the Meditation Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, and the Crypto Podcast. And all can be found on roycall.com. Yeah, I'm shocking you with all my podcasts. Please welcome my guest all the way from beautiful Rome in Italy, Claudia Monacelli.
Monacelli. Yeah, that was
Monacelli.
good.
Yeah.
Good. You're a busy man, Roy. Thank you so much for having me. You're busy. I like that. That's very nice.
But I love it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the
Yeah, I can
podcast.
imagine. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what would you like me to say?
Well, first, how I normally do this show, because I don't like reading a script and everything. Because obviously I like you to introduce yourself. So
yes, okay.
Claudia, let the audience know who you are.
Who am I? Okay. All right. Well, I ask myself that every day, as a matter of fact. Let's see. I'm a university professor. That's my main hat, I think. And that's actually how I got into the podcasting business because of that. Because at one point, well, I had already told Roy right before we started rolling that I'm half Italian and half American. So my hats come and go depending on what country I'm in. But I started teaching at the university, and I teach nothing other than simultaneous interpreting, which means earphones. Usually it's in a booth. You hear one language and you speak another language. And I've done that for so many years. But I started getting fed up with the system, the university system, and the hierarchy, and the non-functional nature of the hierarchy. And it was such a patriarchal system. And and so I was literally, you could see me every other day angrily shouting at why things are being done. So I thought, okay, now wait a minute, I'm a happy-go-lucky person. So I thought, well, they're literally telling me to just calm down. I don't need any power. I'm no one. So I have another hat, which is a third generation psychic. And well, on both sides, actually. And I started for fun, actually for fun. It was 2014, I think. I did it personally through friends. I started reading cards online and using my psychic abilities online. And it was actually really fun. And then it started growing and growing. And one thing led to another. I started using hypnotherapy for past life regression because I'm a hypnotherapist. So there are a lot of other little hats that come and go. And of course, as an academic, we write. We usually create paper. Now, that bit of the run-in with the patriarchal hierarchy that didn't work got me to think. I had a book proposal in my hands, and my publisher in Amsterdam was really enthusiastic about it. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to write another book that nobody reads except for academics. And I remember it was a couple of years ago, and the book was called Women of Power. It was because I'm a sociolinguist, so I look at the delicacy of the language. I do microanalysis of pronouns and modal verbs, things like that, something that no one else looks at really, to see how hegemony shifts in texts, in oral and written text. So I had this proposal, and they really liked it. And I thought, no, let me go throw this to the United States. I'm going to send this book to the United States, so at least somebody will read it. That's what was in my head. So that was a project that I started about a year and a half ago. And of course, that Women of Power, that essentially I was studying TV series, television TV series, media, journalism, and movies, how they wrote and described and represented women of power, not women who had power, not the vice president or anything like that, but women who were so influential that they had power. And those media that were fashioned after real live people. One example is Scandal. Kerry Washington, the actress Kerry Washington in the United States, was the fixer in Washington. And she was fashioned after, I think, someone called I can't remember the first name, Smith, in Washington. And so the person I asked for, because I needed help, I need somebody to tell me, what am I doing? In the United States, I didn't know where to go. And I got a consultant, and she started telling me, well, this is a great idea, but you don't want to use that word. This is not a good thing to do that. And so we slowly but surely changed the style, changed the genre, changed the description, the actual words on the page, because she said, you have a target, right? For me, it will be millennial. Can't even say it. This is a podcast on speech. On speaking.
Well, we're always improving. We're always practicing.
You're good. Well, and so it changed, and now it's in full bloom, let's say, and it has become, the draft title is The Magic of Pleasure Seeking. Live like you've got superpowers. So I've had a lot of fun with that, and that just opened up a new website, a new, not only the psychic hat, but the author hat, and I got into movement as well. And this is just the last thing, and then I'll give you the floor back. I'm a Feldenkrais practitioner, and the Feldenkrais method has all to do with a somatic method to move and try to find the basic. I think tonight is to find explore different ways to do the same thing, to explore different ways to get up off the ground without hurting your back, or an easier way to bring food to your mouth, things like that. And for speaking, which is my little, baby, I started building it up because of the fact that of how many organs in the body and how many parts of the body work to produce the sound, even when it's not about emotional difficulty or stress, not only to control your stress, because I've had the experience of the interpreting, and I've taught public speaking for many years. And I think I better be quiet now. You can talk. No, I don't want to.
No, the purpose is to listen to the guests. People are probably sick of listening to me at this stage.
No. Well, wait. I have a question. Can I ask you a question, Roy?
Of course,
yeah. Oh, what made you start a podcast on speaking?
I went to an event about 4 years ago with Mind Valley, and it was "What's Your Quest?" And I had gone through a lot of stuff. I'd lost everything through banks being corrupt and everything. I saw my goodness. Yeah, I mean, it was a case of, turning maybe say 5 million euro, and it turned out that it was like I went -5 and personally liable. So went through loads of, I've had over 100 court cases and everything, and through that saw
you are a survivor.
Saw all of the corruption. So when I was at that, I said, I see people, especially in Ireland, loads lost their homes and everything. People committed suicide. And I said, I don't want anybody else to go through that. So I said, this is my mission about the awakening. I said, I want to write a book. And it wasn't about the podcast. But when I was at that event, there was people that were brilliant speakers. And I said, okay, I hated speaking. Like, I mean, even though I was running, big jobs and everything, if I had to speak in a boardroom with, like Johnson, the architects, I was voice quivering. So I said, I need to improve. So that's why I joined the Toastmasters and just pushed it. Went to another event. I'd never even thought about doing a podcast. And there was a workshop on podcasting. That was nice. 2018. And I said, okay, but I knew I couldn't be doing a podcast on the awakening. So I actually wrote the book exposing all the corruption, got it to about 20 people. And half of them said, I'm going to be whacked. And I was like, because I was exposing so much. And I was like,
what? How long ago was that? What year was that?
About 3 years ago that I finished.
Okay, so it's very recent.
Yeah. So 2018 was in November. I started the speaking podcast, and then just kind of went on. Like the meditation was the next one, because I love meditation, but what happened is the ones I liked, they changed over to paid, or else they disappeared.
Of course.
And I was like, and I have so many friends around the world that does meditation. I say, hey, can you give me your meditation? So then I said, it's free. It's always going to be there. And I do like from 1 minute to 30 minutes sound meditation, breath work. And then the Polish, the reason I started doing the Polish one is because obviously I'm trying to improve my Polish.
Prove your Polish, yeah.
And the podcasts that I found were either scripted, which I do not enjoy a scripted podcast, or else they were only in Polish. And if you're learning a language, and I said, so I basically, it was my ex-wife. That's how I met my wife, my ex-wife. She was my teacher, and I said, let's do this. And we're 150 odd episodes in, and like it's doing very well. I mean, that's in the top 1.5%. The speaking podcast, the top 1%, and the meditation one, and the awakening is in the top 0.5% of podcasts.
Wow, how interesting. So there's a future for me.
Absolutely.
Because it's so new. And how I started podcasting was that I was writing the book, and I knew that if I had to make it come alive, I had to read it. I had to read it, and I had to read it in a certain way. So every episode became a little bit of chapter 2, which was the chapter about the goddess. And it was enjoyable. It was fun. But there too, you learn as you do it, you learn, because I would just wake up, get to the microphone and start talking. And it was a horrible microphone. It was a terrible mic. The sound was awful, but it was such an authentic episode. And the better the equipment and the more experienced if I could say that, of me as a podcaster, it sounded stilted, So I'm at the point where my next episode has got to be different. So I can't wait. I was going to do it today, and I said, now let me meet Roy first, and then he'll teach me something about speaking, and I'll do the next episode.
I think we go through a journey with like the solo casts. I mean, I've tried that. I mean, the introduction podcast with each one. I just find it strange because I know some people that, like, I listened to one, the Blind Boy, and he does a solo cast, but I prefer the interview style. The solo cast.
Now that's interesting. That's interesting because I still have never had a guest. As a matter of fact, you're going to be one. And I will be having a guest shortly because people started asking me, and I thought, I guess I have to do it. Now I have to do it. And so after you're a guest on a podcast, it's so much easier to understand the other side of it too. And I'm, like you say, it's just a solo show, just a solo thing. And I thought, well, I can shadow box with myself if I had to on a solo. I think I could handle another person. I still do interviewing on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is called, this is my pseudonym, Christelle Martinet, ChristelleMartinet.com, probably in the description of your podcast, will come out. And my main website is my name, Claudia Monacelli.
And I actually wanted to discuss that with you because I saw that you have over 7 million views, and it's like, that's impressive. So, because some people, I mean, because I get loads of guests on, and I mean, I know with, say, like Podmatch and a lot of these, you see the different things.
Yes.
And I mean, I know my speaking podcast, I don't really promote it. It's the audio is way better. The podcast is better, but the numbers are low on that. But on the Polish one, then it's a lot higher on the video because people prefer the video. But I'm just wondering, what can you share with people how you managed to get 7? Because that's very impressive. 7 million.
Well, where did you see that? Because I never go.
Because when you go into the actual podcast, there's you go into about, and it'll tell you how many episodes and the total views.
You mean in Podmatch or in my
podcast? in the actual YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, in my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yes. My YouTube channel. I know what happens there. What is okay. I'll tell you what. I'm camera shy. I really am camera shy. I never like to take pictures. I don't like to show my face. I don't like to do anything. So when I started that YouTube channel in 2014, I only showed my hands because I would mix cards, spread them out, and that's it. And have a crappy microphone, but it was still fun. The candles won. And then slowly but surely, I came out, and one person said to me, he was trying to be nice to me. He said, you really should go live. I said, oh no. I thought, my students, what if my students see me? And he convinced me. He said, well, there's such a different rapport with the audience. And when I did that, when I started doing that, it changed everything. It changed everything for me. All of a sudden I had people in the chat room and talking, writing. They weren't, thank goodness they weren't speaking, because there's so many of them. and the big numbers, I think it was 2 weeks ago, I had a live session, and there were 565 people in the chat while I was live. It was crazy. Excellent. It was crazy, because it was about I was channeling a Bollywood, a very young Bollywood actor, not actress, actor. It was the anniversary of his death, and it was just a couple of years ago, and to commemorate him, right? And so I had done, this was the fourth. I had already done 3, and everybody keeps writing to me, oh please, he seems to be such an attraction. Let's put it that way, an attraction. So slowly but surely, I started learning about him, and journalists from India wrote to me, and his name is Sushant Rajput. I still don't get the name right. Sushant Singh Rajput. And journalists from India wrote to me, well, look, the CBI, which is the Central Bureau of Investigation, I think I have that right, found this. And then there's the police chief that did this, but then his body is, maybe you could find his body, And so the last medium, I have a squeaky chair. The last channel.
Once it's not your bones.
If it were, I'd be in trouble. And the last one, we found that it was in a body of water, and it was in a lake, and it was in a certain city, and we had it was exciting. It was really exciting. And I don't know, I guess you asked me the magic question, and I didn't even jump on the answer. The answer is having fun with it. The magic, when you have pleasure in what you do, it magically turns into something positive for you and for everyone else. And of course, there's no time to go into detail about how to do that step by step, but let me jump out and say something else, because there's one thing that I thought, well, maybe his audience might want, who are listening because they are speakers or they want a tip or something. I did have something to say. It's linked to the Feldenkrais method. And one of the things that I do in my voice coaching, because I work with actors and singers and dubbers. And one of the things that I do, one of the exercises that I do, is work with the tongue, the jaw. Of course, we work with the breathing and the diaphragm and all of that. And everyone knows that it's a matter of breathing and all of that. But the jaw, because I was fascinated when I heard about it, when I learned about it, it was so true. If you imagine there's a skeleton, okay, the head of a person, and you see all the skeletons that are plastic that we see show the head with teeth, but they don't show you the mandibular section of the head. That is it's very hard to find one that will show you the movement that goes forward and backward when it's tied literally at the ears. And why I'm saying that is because that area, the whole chin and the mandibulars, is so heavy that you can imagine the last time you were on a plane trip or a long plane trip or on a train trip, if you fall asleep, the first thing that happens is your mouth will open and you wake up and the first thing you do is close because it's so heavy. And we have to remember that, because every time you move the jaw to the right, to jaw to the left, keep your nose in alignment, but the jaw moves right and left. It's such a big movement because it pushes the muscles under your ears. I'm getting technical, but it's so important. Put the muscles under the ears to make that happen. And if you can concentrate on something like that, you won't even think of being stressed. When you have to speak, and letting the breath, of course, flow. But I do have another
I think that's why when you're on a plane as well, when you nod off,
yeah, you're not off.
Just, you just throw your head back so the mouth will be open.
So the jaw stays closed, right?
Next day, so I put an elastic band around my head.
I could use that elastic band from my chair. So it doesn't make a noise. There was something else that this week happened. I'm an audiophile. I love to listen. I just love it. So I have, I always listen to audio books because I'm blind as a bat practically, but I'm very, very sensitive to sound. And one of the recent books that I came across is called The Voice of Change. And I think that the author is Pierce. I can't remember the first name, but he is a speaking coach and some other hats as well. And he was Princess Diana's speech coach. And so the book was very interesting. But when you like to listen to sound, you like to listen to a good sound. And when I listen to audiobooks, I like the book when the author narrates, because the author is so knowledgeable about the book, and they know every single breath they have to take and every single pause that they have to make. And unfortunately, and I say this in public, and I will say it publicly and in the ratings, but the man, British, obviously is into speech because of the way he speaks, but he's very affected. Is very slow, and the timbre of and it's almost impossible to listen to, and the voice quality of the microphone that he used is not good. But there are a few things there that are really interesting. One very, very important notion is that when you speak, it's not just a matter of processing and spewing out pages of a book of your knowledge. All right. Everybody is knowledgeable about something, and everyone is knowledgeable about what they're supposed to say, or they know themselves if they're going to talk about themselves. But some people have a way of practicing almost too much. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. And it is not easy to have a flow. You're not flowing with them, And I was listening to this man 2 days. I gave it 2 days, then I couldn't take it anymore. But he did say something very important. He said, the voice is not something that is used only for the process of speech, but it is a mirror. It reflects to other people the health of your body, the condition of your mind, and your very soul comes out, and I thought, oh, well, I better keep my mouth shut then. It used to be the eyes were the windows of the soul. Now, every time you open your mouth, you're a goner. Okay, I'm going to give you the floor again.
And there's a few things I want to talk about. One is the book, because I remember, because I have a friend, and she's written a few books, and basically, and they've done very well. And she said, look, I'll help you. I'll do. And so she done one chapter, and I just kind of thought, nah, she's putting that in her words, and thinking it's just taking my soul, because like the way I've written it, I'm kind of writing it in a way that I know that people will understand, and sometimes they're kind of looking. And I'm just wondering, did you have that with your one? Did you think that somebody was taking out what you're?
Well, let's say up until that point, up until 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, when I worked with this woman, actually the woman who's working with me, we've now still since then become friends. She is a ghost writer. She writes for other people, and I didn't go to her for that because, like you just said, I like my words. I want to keep it. I mean, what's the fun? I actually enjoy it so much. I get so much pleasure out of the actual putting down the pages on the words on the page, because you learn so much. You learn so much. Actually, it was the Adamowicz University in Poznan. I mentioned I had gone to Poland, and it's Adamowicz. It's difficult for me to pronounce, but there we were talking about this precise notion that when you study, because they were coaching doctoral students, and I was on the doctoral commission, and I found myself saying things that my supervisor was telling me. Writing is part of the research. So if you have a plan, you write a table of contexts, you write a mind map with the key notion in the beginning and all of the spokes and everything. But actually putting pen to paper makes you see where your thought processes go. Have you ever heard of the idea of automatic writing? That's coming from my psychic hat here. Automatic writing is something that people do if they desire to do that, if they can get messages like that. If they want messages from their spirit guides, they take pen to paper and they start writing. Their hand moves, they just let their pen do the working, do the walking, you know. And it's very difficult because in the beginning, it seems it's just like hypnosis. When you're under hypnosis and you're speaking, part of you thinks, I'm doing this purposefully. I'm the one doing this. And then someone asks you questions, and then you say things that you wouldn't have normally said if you were wide awake. And then you know that it's different, right? This is the exact same thing. You start writing, and sometimes words come out of the page, words come out of your pen that are odd. And a client of mine said, I've done it. I've tried it. The second day was just gibberish, gibberish, gibberish. The third day, she said, I started seeing keywords. And I was getting keywords that seemed to be stimulants to me. They were motivating me to go on and then look for other things. And so when you say about using your own words, yes and no, all right? For example, the key to writing is so people will read it. That's because you want to communicate things, right? And if nobody reads it, then you aren't a writer. It's not a book, really. So you also have to think of where it's being published and what your target audience is and how they speak, what their voice is like. I initially had pitched it for a 40s, 60 females. And then my coach said, look, let's bring it down to 25, 35, tops 40, because that is, these women are really in need. There's so much mental disease in that group, that cohort, that they really do need that kind of prescriptive. I'm having trouble on this speaking podcast. Prescriptive kind
you
of.
should listen to my other episode.
I have. But now I will even more. And so the idea there is, I'll give you one example. I was writing a chapter on the goddess. Okay. It starts out by saying, okay, you just receive a phone call from a friend of a friend, and they invite you to a masquerade party, but they tell you that they want you to come masqueraded as a goddess. And then the following couple of sentences say something like, well, you look for a role model. What am I going to wear? But there are no role models. Then you think of Hollywood, the goddesses of, the films, the movies of the 50s and 60s. But the protagonists there don't really seem any close to you. And so when this woman read it, she said, let's change that word, protagonist. And I thought, why? What do you mean? That's what they are. And she said, well, no, because it would, let's say the main characters or something. And there I had a wake up call, and I thought, oh, I guess I understood what she meant. And then it made me change a lot of the things, the way I wrote. And sometimes the register went up and down and up and down. If it was an interior dialogue about the person talking to themselves, it becomes a little complicated. But definitely, Roy, you are the best writer in this world. You have to write your book. No one can tell anybody your story. Definitely.
And
yeah.
when she was getting you to, change from, because you were originally saying 40 to 60, and she said kind of 25 to 35.
Exactly.
So when you said that straight away, my marketing head came on, and I was like, which is the biggest market that buy books? What age group?
Well, it's the younger women, actually. It's the younger women. The older women go more to self-help groups. They go more online. They go more to card readers. They go more to therapeutic sessions. But the younger cohort are more likely to purchase books. It's a very, very strong market. And I understood that. And I got that, but I didn't believe her. I didn't expect that. I just didn't expect it. I expected that women who were aging, God forbid, don't strike me dead. I said it. Who were aging would be more psychologically dependent on ideas that they could get from the outside rather than from the inside, like you mentioned meditation. That's what my thoughts were, but I was wrong apparently. Well, I'll let you know. But so far that's my target. That is the target. Yeah. And in your case, how did that work? Did you have a target or no?
Basically, mine is for all, and it's for, like, I was even looking at the different languages because I want to get it in all the different languages as well, because I've realized that, like, say, the bailiffs, they're corrupt. I saw it in Poland, and in Ireland they're everywhere. So
this is interesting stuff.
And I've given examples of what they've done. So for example, like, one of the bailiffs was working with the valuer and a property, I'll say.
What is the value? The valuer who puts a value on a property?
Yeah. So they shouldn't be doing that. So basically a commercial property that we had, which was, I'll talk and say dollars maybe, just say it was worth $1 million. And then they basically then valued it at $500,000. And what they do is they put it up to advertise. So technically they're supposed to promote the property, like the bailiff, to get the best price so that you pay off the loan that you owe.
Right.
And what they do is they do a screenshot. So they put it up for a second. So they have the proof that it was advertised, but it wasn't really advertised. And this is going on big time. So basically then nobody knows about it. So nobody turns up. And the first auction is at 75% of the price, so that would have been 1 point, and then the second one is at 50%, which would be basically $250,000 for a property that was worth more than $1 million.
This sounds like a Netflix series. You've got talent there. You've got a story. Sell it to the highest bidder.
And it's going on all over. Another one, there was another properties, they bribed the people in the room. So they had their own cronies buying the properties. And I had spies in there and they got paid themselves.
You got wise. Yeah,
I know. So, and to be honest, like the whole, but I thought it was Poland, but the more I researched it, I saw it happening in Ireland, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So, getting back to your question, who's it for? It's for everybody, because people are going through that. They're losing their houses at a young age, dealing with the banks. I mean, the corruption going on with the banks, and it's just making you wise. And it's basically geared with solutions, because a lot of people are kind of reporting what's going on and all that. Doesn't put you in doom and gloom. But we need solutions, and it was based on having solutions for a lot of the things that I was
interesting
writing.
So when is the next book coming out?
I've actually a few in the pipeline. I have one on the podcasting, because when I started doing the podcast, and I read, I think, something like 8 podcasting books, and I said they're all missing something, because there's a secret sauce there. And
I like that. What? I'll say that again. A secret sauce. I like that. I'm going to write that down.
And I've got like the meditation podcast was spirituality in America #1. I've got #1 in the UK. I've got #1 in a load of countries in the charts. And I see other people, they're trying to do it. It's mainly down to the marketing. A lot of it is the marketing. And, some people, you could have the best, voice. You could have the best interviewing technique.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like opening the best shop.
Yes.
People don't know about it. They walk past. Then you have to kind of, keep promoting yourself, and just different techniques. So just for you and the listeners, because there might be some other podcasters, is what I've learned is, especially with the Polish one, is you put up the episodes, so then you just put up the audio. The next one is I put up pictures relevant to that. So for example, if I was talking, like the one we put up the other day was getting married, I put up a picture of somebody getting married. That grabs their attention. Pictures grab their attention with the link as well. Then when it's up on the video, some people are afraid to do that. When they put up an episode, they just promote it once. You have to keep, and I don't do it as much as I should because I've so many on now.
Other things. Yeah.
But I'm just constantly getting people, reaching out and just thanking me. And when I meet them, they go, "Oh, I'm listening to all the episodes." And, the way I do it is, my main purposes with the speaking is to make change in the world. You need to be a good speaker, and politicians can speak, and they ain't good people. So we need the good people to actually.
They don't have much to say.
Well, they do, but they just talk waffle and they just repeat it. So it's like,
there's a whole art about that. At least, I mean, the Italians are masters at that kind of, because when I mentioned before that I work with simultaneous interpreting. And so the big problem is an Italian will get up in the European Parliament and start talking and go on and on and on. And the English booth would just say, he refuses that proposal, and so of course it becomes political, and you have to put it on the same scale. There needs to be same time, same pay, same time. But I could see that. I could see the difficulty there. Yeah.
What's the best techniques? Because I was talking to somebody about that recently. It was actually a guest that's American who's in Russia, but when he's doing the speaking, he's got 2 translators with him who do simultaneous translation. I mean, that's a gift to be able to do that. So
I wrote a book. I wrote a book that says it's not a gift, but you can learn how to interpret. I do believe that they're gifts. Doctors can be gifted, and gifted healers. Not all doctors are gifted healers. I know that. And it's really not about knowing the 2 languages, because anyone can know the 2 languages. The issue is to understand what people are getting at. Where is their speech moving towards? Because it's so fast. We have a delay that's called ear voice span. The difference between what comes into your ear, the time lag between that and what comes out of your mouth. So it could be anywhere from 1 second to 10 seconds for languages like German, where the verb comes towards the end and there's a longer time lag, and so the best, you ask about the method. There are 3 methods really, or 3 or 4, but one is in the simultaneous booths with the earphones, and that is by far the most protected, the easiest actually, because you're not exposed to the public outside. The second best is what you just described as whisper interpreting. So it happens when you're seated next to a delegate, next to someone, and you listen to the audio of a person speaking in a one-to-many fashion, and you're sitting next to them, and you whisper the interpretation. It's good for 1 person only, 2 tops. And since the virus has hit, what is being done is phone interpretation, online interpretation that has a whole different set of rules. And remote hubs are created where they have booths, you're locked in. And the last mode, which is by far the most, let's say, the most daunting and frightening if you have a little bit of fear of talking in public, it's called consecutive. And that occurs it's typical of press conferences where journalists ask a guest questions, and they do it 1 sentence, 1 thought, 1 paragraph, 1 concept, and then you give it back. And it's not whispering, because or else that would be because the press need clear language so they can bring the actual quotation, the citation into their writing media or wherever they're putting it. So what happens there is that we take notes. There's a certain note-taking system that we use. It's not stenography. It's something different. It works with concepts. And that alone is in itself is another podcast, I think. But you listen, you jot down keywords, let's say keywords, and then you give the idea back or the notions back to the person, to the guest. And it usually works very smoothly. But I had one occasion when an actor, and I will not mention his name. Well, it was actually Rupert Everett. He was in Rome and with another actor, an American actor, and he was working on an epic movie in Russia at the time, and there was a huge press conference. Very many. There were well, huge is about 100 or more than 100. That's a large hall. That is a large press conference. At one point, when all of that finished, and there was a pause, he was taken to a side hall, a side room, and one of the national Italian stations wanted to interview him. So I went with him, and he was wearing his kilt, and he's quite he has a certain disposition, his nature. He was famous back in the day for him being not very kind to the press or having difficult personality. We go into the room, and the questions were something like this. So, Mr. Everett, I understand, welcome to Rome. Okay, so this is the nature of, this is the register of it. Welcome to Rome. How was your trip? Okay, back and forth, back and forth. We know that you have 2 houses. You have, or 3 rather, one in the UK, one in Paris, and one in Los Angeles. Which of those do you prefer? And so he goes on a long description about these 3 properties, and he's forgetting that I have to interpret, of course. And so I have my little notepad, and I'm doing what I have to do. And so I look at him, and when he catches my gaze, he stops. And then I take up my notes and I start saying what I have to say. And he stops me and he says, I didn't say that. And I said, well, can you repeat it, please? And so, and while this is happening, the news station is filming him. I'm off to the side. My voice is being recorded, so it will be dubbed on the news. And so when that happens, there will be a lot of editing. So I said, well, would you like to repeat yourself? And he says it again. And I say it again. He says, but I didn't say that. And I said, look, you know what? I said, he must have known Spanish. I don't know. That's what my first thought was. I said to him, you know, the Italians are so happy when guests come from other countries and speak their language. Maybe you would like to tell them yourself. And he just waved his hand and let it go. And I thought it was just, you know, it could get some, you know, a little bit, because I don't know what he meant. What could I have said? But being in the public is always, you're extending yourself all the time. So getting back to speaking, that's why probably it's so difficult, because of the emotions. And sometimes the emotions aren't really only because of the stress and your fear of speaking, but sometimes it's because of the topic. You know, the topic could be emotional. Maybe you're called on to give your account of a personal tragedy, you know, and that alone is difficult. And of course, everyone expects tears on stage, you know, but that too needs to be sort of controlled, if we could use that word, controlled. My chair is still squeaking. I have to find a way of putting
get
oil.
WD-40. Give it us. With like, especially in Parliament, you know, because if you've got the person doing the simultaneous,
yeah,
I'd just say they have a political agenda themselves. Is there somebody that actually checks on the translator to make sure that they're actually saying the right thing?
Yes, actually they do. All right. Well, for newbies, for trainees, new interpreters, there's always going to be, among the permanents, they call them, the full-time employees, interpreters, fonctionnaires, they go and spot check. But one of my big discussions of ethics with my students early on, I always say, look, we have an extremely strong power, and this in terms of the speaking. When you open your mouth and people are listening, you have such a power that I think people don't realize oftentimes. And power is a funny kind of concept, because power goes powerful and powerless. And depending on where you're standing socially and politically, and how far your words are, using that micro-analysis method of linguistics that I always talk about, using the right modal verbs to bring yourself closer to the persons, that can really, you can win the day, you can ruin your face and never be called again for a job, or you can change the course of history, literally. Let me give you an example, okay? I a speaker, and this actually happened to me. There's a speaker in a group of people. I was working with the Italian speakers. There were two, and one was very childish, and he just wrote havoc everywhere we went. He was just childish, and we went to an underground. I guess I could say it on air. It was the days of Reagan, the Reagan presidency, and the notion of Star Wars. You remember those words, and it's still underground in Colorado. There is Colorado Springs, and there's an entire facility underground. And to be able to go there, I was with a NATO group of delegates from different NATO countries, and there were 3 interpreters. There was a Turkish interpreter and a Spanish interpreter. And just as I explained, for certain modes of interpreting, you have to have pen and paper, but they didn't let us bring in anything, no books, no pencils, no cigarettes, no bags, nothing. So we went down, and we did go down. It was underground. And the first thing that we did, we were given a tour of the facility. So all of the technicalities of how many tons and on springs and all of that. And this delegate, this pain in the neck, actually kept saying, wait, what did he say? Is that true? And every time he spoke, I missed what was coming in because I didn't have an earphone, and it went on and on and on. Finally, we get to the main room where a general came out he was from Texas hat with a whip, and he had on his Texas boots, and he was, flipping the whip, and he's going, okay, ladies, gentlemen, what do you think about this place? And so it was caricature. It was really caricature. It was humorous at times, And above us to the right and to the left, there were screens. Now, this was back in I guess, Reagan. What years was that? Or that? I guess what?
80s.
80s, right? 80s, mid 80s, I think. Yeah, mid 80s. And the screens were up, and the general started saying, well, you saw the facility, but just imagine that with one press of my finger, I could communicate to all of those countries and he was pointing to all of the screens around us in the world that could change the course of history. And he went on and on. It was humorous. I felt like I was watching a movie, And this delegate said, ask him how much he makes. And I said, what? And he said, ask him how much he makes. And I said, and just when I was ready to say, that's not a question that you would ask somebody in public in the United States. And he stood up and said in Italian, how much do you make? Just like that. Just like that. Of course, I had to say something. So I stood. I wanted to, bury myself underground. I stood and I said, the gentleman to my right would like to know your salary, please. And the general said, you want to know how much I make? You want to know how much? And he was, it was starting to look like a cartoon. Well, I make, and it was a nominal, it's a government. He was a government employee, a civil servant after all. It wasn't a high salary. He says, I make so and so and so and so. It must have been something like $35,000 at the time, which was really not to write home about. And he looked around the room and he said, you think that's a lot? Because I guess he had planned his speech. I don't know, but there was a link missing between what he was saying and the people in the room who were all from European countries, from NATO countries, and who were not American. But he kept going on and on in his show. He's saying, but don't you understand that I am? And this went on and on. And so needless to say, there is power there. I mean, I could have said, the man to my right wants to compliment you and your responsibility. He's wondering if you could express yourself on the challenges of your responsibilities. And the thing would have taken another trail, but I was stupid then. I didn't know what I knew now, what I know now. But yes, we do have, you do. And going back to the speaking, speakers, I guess the notion of power doesn't really get into the minds of people when they're giving a job or something like that to do. And usually you think, I usually think first of, well, the money. No, I'm only joking, but you do. I mean, it's a practical business and it's something that you do. And I'm thinking, well, how much glory am I after? Who cares about so there's options that you weigh, but then there's the message. And usually that is the key for everyone. But then again, the responsibility and power, when you have power, you have responsibility. So you have to remember that you're responsible for what people can take away, because you know what you're saying, but you have no clue as to what they will understand. And that's part of the game of preparing a speech, thinking about all of the different scenarios and the options of, well, if these words might lead them to think this, or these words might lead them to think that. I'm going to give you the floor again and drink some tea.
So, like you mentioned, because I actually listened to one of the videos, the channeling, because you mentioned about the Bollywood star, but I looked at the one with Kurt Cobain.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really interesting, to be honest with you. It was like,
well, I don't remember.
So you're touching in, you're basically, you're just getting, you might explain how it actually works.
Kurt Cobain was an interesting case. When I started doing the channeling online and people started writing to me, why don't you do this? Or why don't you do Diana? Or why don't you do Marilyn Monroe? And going on. And someone kept, right, 2 or 3 people wrote Kurt Cobain. I'm like, who's Kurt Cobain? I was a disco queen. I didn't know about that kind of music. And so she said, yes, I know it's a very mysterious death and all of that. And I just let it go until I started dreaming about him. And that, you dream about the guy once because I saw his picture, and you dream about the guy again. And the third time I thought there's something here. And I realized since the beginning of the year, actually, that what happens is that souls who have not crossed over come to me for help. And he was one of them. He hadn't crossed over. He was earthbound. And that happens for a number of things. And I'll open just a little window here. This is for, I don't know, listeners may have different spiritual beliefs, but in that context of what the work I was doing, it was earthbound. He was earthbound. And what happens is when you die, and I'll tell you my take, this is the way I work, and it's a tragic death, or a death that came suddenly and you were not able to have closure with a loved one, or closure with some kind of work that you had to do, or there's some reason that that the soul grapples onto life. They don't cross over, and that creates for them what I call a peri-spiritual place, which means that they are on earth and they are attached to humans. They do attach to humans, and they can move to other places, but they take energy from humans, and they actually try to communicate with humans, and no one sees them ever. And so they don't even know they have passed. And that has been happening so many times that, I understand that that's a role. Okay, I have that role and I'll do that before we go on into it. And so during the session, there were questions there, but I introduced the session with a series, if I remember correctly, the story about his passing and a little bit about him, because not all of the viewers would know who Kurt Cobain was or what was the mystery of his death. And then I take questions from the audience, or questions that they had sent me previously on my YouTube channel. And so the show went through, and apparently, because I don't remember many of the things I say, I don't have the time to go back and listen, but apparently I mentioned that the artifice of his death, the person who actually helped him to overdose, helped him to usher him close to his death, was a person who had played with him before. It was a very close friend, and I can't remember the name, I don't remember. the whole week I was bombarded with people writing to me. How could you say that? How could you say that? He was such a mild-mannered person. He was a joy. He would have never done that. And I think, I didn't say it. The devil made me do it. You know, and I just, don't shoot me. I'm only the piano player. But what I do, how it works is that they are there. I mean, I can actually see them, and it's like interpreting. If you're interpreting, you listen to the keywords, and then you interpret the message in another language, because it's another language. In this, there is a spiritual language, and the spiritual language doesn't have real language per se, but there are gestures, there's vibration, there are sounds, and there are moods. And it was very he was very particular in that. I vaguely remember that we were talking about, that I started about how he looked, how he presented to me, how he was, what kind of clothing he was wearing, if I'm not mistaken. And then he'll answer questions in relation to his wife. I can't remember her name. Love? Something Love. Courtney Love, right? Yeah. Because there was a whole theory that she had killed him and all of that, and I went through that at the beginning. But the idea was that the person who did bring him or ushered him to his death had an affair with his wife, and that's how I was told. I mean, that's how the story that I got. And then people thought, well, who paid you to say that? You know, we mediums get a bad deal, you know. I thought, why would anybody pay me to say that? and so it's difficult, because while I said, and I remember what I said to you, Roy, that doing things that you enjoy for pleasure gives you pleasure, and they cannot go wrong. There is a proviso, though. I'm sort of an adventurous person, and I tread where other people do not go, and hence the channeling and the mediumship. But that brings on a lot of energy, a lot of negative energy, even in the chat rooms. You know, people in person, it happens, in hospitals it happens, but when you're in communication, even our communication, you do have an energy exchange, and it could weigh on you very heavily. And that's why I only leave it on for 45 minutes. And when I channel for clients, it is a maximum of 45 minutes. 45 minutes is the channeling session, and we have an intro and an outro, you know, just to get the mood of who they want to channel and how they're feeling. Because everyone, it's just so touching. It's such a touching experience. Everyone, especially when they're channeling their loved ones, it's no matter how let's say how little they believe you, or how they don't want to believe that is the soul. Oh, everyone cries, and it makes me cry too. You know, it makes me cry. I feel so bad. But you know, I begin by saying, you have tissues with you. You know? But you've seen that session, and I guess, I don't know what I do. There are two different ways of channeling, two different, like the interpreting, there are different ways. But one way that is very popular, not all mediums like to do this or can do it, is a deep meditative state, which means that the person completely devoids their persona and takes on the samgyans and the voice patterns of the person that they're channeling. Or there is a light trance state, which I like to use, because that's what I do. That's what I'm good at. That's how I am able to relate the messages in a fast way. And that's what comes to me. I don't know if I would be able to enter a deep trance. I don't think I would like to do that, you know? So that's there too, but there are pros and cons, of course. The deep meditative state, the trance does drain you entirely, you know, and it takes time to recover. And as well, what I do drains me. But in the beginning, when I used to do it online, as soon as I shut my computer off, I thought, let me get a cognac. I have to sit down. What did I just do? but but as you do it more often, it doesn't come, it's never matter of fact, never, ever. But you understand what you're doing more, and you learn about it more. So, gee, boy, you made me talk about a lot of things.
And just because you mentioned, because I know we've hit the hour, like, but you
okay.
mentioned about the Bollywood guy,
Yes,
and you mentioned about and just not just him, but has there been situations where somebody has identified where they're, because I've seen something before with that somebody was able, actually some child was able to say that he was murdered in a previously, and was able to say where he was murdered, and they checked and they found the
yes.
body.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. Well, that's what I mean. Obviously, I'm not in contact with the CBI. I didn't even know what the CBI was, but everything I do, there are journals to listen. His family members contacted me, and there are cases, and I believe what I say is what I hear. Okay. But yes, there are cases, not only in channeling, but many people come to me for different reasons, and to say the least. I mean, that's simplifying it. But one case, a woman came to me because she couldn't find her son. And it was a reading, it was a card reading at the time. And the cards were coming out very, very oddly. There's the Eight of Swords, and the Eight of Swords is a paralyzed movement. And then we have, then I used another deck, an Italian oracle deck called La Vita Sibilla, where there's actually a prisoner. And the prisoner was usually someone who's married, the ball and chain. And I just told her, I think he's really in prison. And she, the next day, was able to find out where. She was from Naples, and that really was surprising for me, because you don't always get the feedback from the customers, but a lot of the time, well, most of the time I do, because they want answers, from anything like there's a woman who is investing in cryptocurrency, and she wants to know which currencies that are more likely to give her some return, and in which time period. And I said, look, honey, if I knew the time period, I think I'd be a millionaire. I said, my son once said to me, Ma, come on, tell me which soccer team I have to bet on. And I got the first two right, and the third one wasn't right. And I said, spirits aren't here to tell you that kind of stuff. But I don't even buy scratch card. Maybe I should.
Well, what you can do the next day is, somebody asks you that, just tell her she can listen to my crypto podcast, because I'm bringing on people that are giving good advice instead of pushing their own agenda. Really? Yeah, because I see there's a lot of corruption in that field. Really? And there's 80% of the coins disappear.
Good, I will.
So
she's in the UK, actually, this client of mine. And when will that happen? On this podcast?
No, it's a new podcast. So I've already done a few episodes. So I'll be launching it. It'll probably, I don't know, will I get it out this month, but definitely in July it'll be out there.
You have to keep in touch and let me know. You're going to make a list of the podcasts that you have, so then I could start learning Polish. The English, I mean, the Poles, really, their English is perfect, near perfect. I was so surprised. Oh, thank God, I thought. And I'm a tango dancer.
They learn all the tenses, and and the problem is with that, because they try to get them to be so perfect, a lot are afraid to speak, so yet they could write it down perfectly. And they should just encourage people to start speaking, and then later develop the different tenses.
Yes. Yeah, oh, well, you are an expert at that now. When I was in the last time I was in Poland, I was there for 2 weeks because I had a university engagement, and I dance Argentine tango. And so every time I move, every time I go somewhere, I go dancing, in underground places, and there is a culture of they usually find themselves, the tango dancers know there's channels of communication, right? And the first time I went it was Poznan. That's when I went the first time. And I thought, well, how am I going to communicate? And I said, no, this is perfect. You don't have to speak. I won't even have to speak. And that's, will be silence in tango between two strangers. Perfect. And then I heard their English and it was perfect. And so they wanted to talk and talk and talk. I thought, oh, here's a native English speaker. Oh, come on. So, but yes.
Brilliant. Listen, you're doing a lot of stuff. So like, no, I mean, I've got lots of podcasts, but you're doing a lot of different things.
I know
with the book and everything. So like, where can people find you? What's the best?
Okay. Well, I have two websites. One is claudiamonacelli.com. That's my author and movement website. And then ChristelleMartinet.com.
That's your tax evasion name, is it?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Well,
tax optimization, as I like to say.
No, unfortunately, I have to pay every single tax. I have an American company. It's registered in the United States, and so I have to file two returns, one in Italy and one in the United States. We're bound by law because there's a convention between the two countries. And I thought to myself, I'm getting the short end of the stick here. So, but they can contact me through my websites or go to my YouTube channel, and they might enjoy it. It's for entertainment, really, but they might see something that they like and write to me. They'll find my information through your description of the episode, I think, right?
Exactly. I put all the links in. I encourage people to actually check the videos because I really enjoyed the Kurt Cobain one, and I definitely said I'm going to look at more of them.
Oh, so, good. Wow, that's wonderful. Music to my ears.
Listen, Claudia, it's been wonderful having you on.
It has been. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for this. We had a lot of fun.
Definitely.
You good luck to you, Roy.
Thank you.
Bye.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all the episodes on speakingpodcast.com. They're all different. Be sure to go back to the start. We're on BitChute, we're on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up, share with your friends. Until next week, take care.